Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, and I believe that all readers should read children's literature, especially adults. So that's what we do on the KidLit Love podcast. We celebrate all things children's literature, picture books, early readers, middle grade, and young adult novels too. Whether you're an adult reading to your inner child or connecting the young readers in your lives with fantastic books, you've come to the right place. Each week, we'll talk to a different children's literature author and discuss their books, their hopes and dreams for readers, their writing process, and much, much more. So grab a notebook to build your TBR, and let's get to today's episode of KidLit Love. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the KidLit Love podcast. I'm Stephanie Affinito, your KidLit loving host, inviting you back to another bookish conversation with a children's literature author. This week, I'm talking with Brian Weisfeld. He's the co-author of You're the Boss, a kid's ultimate guide to starting your own business with Bonnie Bader, and the author of the Startup Squad series. Brian is a youth entrepreneurship advocate who has spent his life building businesses on 3 different continents, from a gummy bear business as a kid to billion-dollar businesses such as IMAX Corporations and Coupons.com as an adult. He's here to talk about his newest book with us today, and I have a feeling so much more. So let's just get right to it. Brian, welcome to KidLit Love. I'm so glad you're here today.
Well, thank you. I'm a KidLit lover, so I feel like I'm in the right place.
You are in a good home. And I'm excited because your book, You're the Boss, really is a first for KidLit Love. I have talked with nonfiction informational text authors, but they're primarily autobiography books or nonfiction picture books. And it's really the first time I've had a book that is more of an informational guide for kids and adults, I'll point out later in the episode. So I'm really excited to talk to you about it. And I'm hoping you'll start us off with a bit of an introduction. So give us your backstory. Who are you? Where are you? How did you get here publishing books for kids?
Well, I could probably take up our whole time together giving you the full story, but I'll give you the short version, and then we can dive in where you think we might want to spend some more time. I've spent my career helping entrepreneurs build businesses. As you said, I was the right hand of CEOs and founders and helping to build businesses both in New York and now in Silicon Valley. But I've got 2 daughters, and when my older daughter was 8, I watched her selling Girl Scout cookies and running a charity bake sale, and I realized that these were life lessons that she was learning about taking a risk and dealing with rejection and talking to strangers and looking people in the eye. Um, and obviously all the things she was learning about entrepreneurship and making money and all those wonderful things, but it's really the life skills that really took me because I this was an introverted kid who was sort of learning how to play the role of the extrovert and at the same time building self-confidence and building self-esteem. And I sort of thought it was amazing, and I decided I wanted to spend the next chapter of my career helping to get more kids interested in starting that first business so that they can develop these same life skills as well. And I'm a business guy, not a writer, so my journey was unique. But about 5 years after I had the idea for creating these books, I released the first book in the Startup Squad series, which was published by Macmillan, which is sort of a unique take on fiction that we can talk about as well. And now my most recent book is nonfiction. It's a kid's guide to how to start your business, and it's combining everything I've learned both in my business career as well as in my most recent stage of my career where I've been talking to kids at schools and libraries all across the country, giving them ideas to start businesses and inspiring them to do so.
Yeah. And I'll point out, technically in the subtitle, it says a kid's ultimate guide to starting your own business. But as I joked with you before we hit record, I have a dream to have a business. And I felt like your book just took, the hundreds of hours that I have spent browsing and watching YouTube and trying to figure things out and just put it in this brightly colored book that I read front to back and thought, I didn't need to do any of that. And I'm an adult. So it is a kid's book, but listen, adults, on this podcast, I think everybody should read Kid Lit. And this is a book that I think anyone can benefit from. But my goodness, to get it as a child and to realize the possibilities and to have it not seem daunting, but doable with so many examples filled in the pages of how and why, it's powerful. It's so, so powerful.
Well, thank you. I think, to your first point, a lot of the steps in starting a business are similar, right? You need
Mm.
to figure out who your target customers are. You need to figure out what's unique about your business. What's that it factor? You're going to need a sales pitch. You're going to need to price your products and those sorts of things. And so those lessons are for children of all ages, as I like to say. And yeah, that's one of the things what we try to do a lot, and I did it in the Startup Squad books as well, is we want kids to realize that just because they're a kid, it doesn't mean they can't start a big business. And
Right.
so throughout this book, we share stories of, I think we've got 12 or 13 different kids who've successfully started businesses, and use those as inspiration for kids to realize that they can think bigger than maybe they originally were.
Yeah. Those were powerful parts of the book for me, to actually see the picture of that young entrepreneur and then hear the story, whether it was that first little seed of where the idea came or to where it went. It was so inspiring. And these kids are creative and clever, as all kids are, if they just have the outlet for it.
These kids are amazing, and that's one of the things I love to do, is to share the stories of these kids and reflect a little bit of the spotlight that's on me in the book towards those kids. So even like my book launch that I did, I had a kids business fair. I invited
Mhm.
17 kids from the community who had businesses or wanted to start one to set up a table, and I brought my friends and family as to a book launch, as most authors do, but it was more about supporting the kids and shopping from the kids than it was celebrating me in the book. And their stories are amazing, and I'm always happy to share them and put a little bit of spotlight on them.
Yeah. So, to give listeners a little idea of the content of the book, there are 16 chapters that literally go from what's your why? Why do you want to have a business? All the way to let's build your empire and everything in between, from figuring out what your business might be, what problem you might solve, what idea you might have. But then what I was so struck by were those business skills, like find your customer and what's your story and what's your brand and your logo. Who's your competition? What about, your budget and your money and your pitch and even who are your customers and hintings at email lists? I thought, my goodness, there is everything in there. So I am curious to ask, how did you go about that process of taking everything you had known based on everything you have done and built and really whittling it down to what matters most in such a kid-friendly way?
There's two parts to that. One is, I've spent the last 10 years helping kids start businesses and providing the tools for kids and parents and educators to be able to do that. And so a lot of it is over the years having developed things like business plan templates and exercises that kids can go through. One of the things that we do in this book, it's interesting, there's a lot of areas in the book that are, we'll say to the kid, here's the concept of how to find a customer. Now write down some ideas about how you could find a customer.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Penguin said to me was, well, we can't actually create space in the book for the kids to write it, because if we do, the schools and libraries won't buy the book, because as soon as the first kid takes it out and writes in it, we're done.
Yeah.
So we drive people to the you'retheboss.com website, where we have a 26, 27 page workbook that's a companion to the book itself. And that was really the guts of where the book started, was this business plan template that I had created over the years. So that's the first part in terms of coming up with a lot of the content. And then the stories, I know a lot of these kids and have been in touch with them, and so it was easy for me to say, oh, this person has a really good example of marketing, that sort of thing. The other part of it is my amazing co-author, Bonnie Bader. And it's interesting. I need to draw the distinction between the fact that I consider myself an author, but not a writer. And interestingly, my younger daughter, when she was in third grade, got into an argument with her teacher because her teacher was using those words interchangeably. And she was like, no, no, no. My dad's an author. His name was on the cover of the book, but he's not a writer. He works with co authors. And so Bonnie is my co-author. And so the process for this book and all of my books has been where I will work with my publisher, and we will come up with the idea of the book that we want to do, and the characters and the content, and create anywhere from a 6 to 8 page outline of the story of the narrative. Obviously, that's more for the fiction books. And then we give it over to my co-author, who in our first 3 books was Nicole C. Carr, who's amazing, and now Bonnie Bader, who's incredible as well. And then she will take that and then create the first draft and the first manuscript. And I'm blown away by the skills and the talents of the people that can create those sorts of things, because it's not a skill that I necessarily have.
Well, you do say in the book, you can ask for help. It's okay
Yes.
to ask for help. And so
Yes.
that's pretty much what you have done to create this thing to then share with others. I'm so glad you mentioned those templates and that, companion online, because um I had fun going back and forth with my own ideas
Yeah.
there on there as well. Um there were really two things that really struck me that I loved, that I think both educators, kids, parents putting this book into kids' hands. I really loved the focus on developing the mindset of an entrepreneur, because in in my world growing up thinking of entrepreneurs, and part of that is why I think I get in my own way sometimes, an entrepreneur is just simply someone who makes money, right? They have their own business and they make money, and I don't know how to do that, so that's not me. But in your book, I love your definition of an entrepreneur. It really isn't just about business. And can I read the definition that you provided in the
Go
book?
right ahead, please.
All right. It's an entrepreneur is not afraid of taking risks and knows how to turn problems into business opportunities. I read that and my mind just expanded a bit. It's a way of thinking, it's a way of being, it's a way of trying. I really felt that throughout the book, you did such a great job of thinking about, an entrepreneur has the mindset of, is it an opportunity or is it a problem? And what do you try at the risk of um, not failure, but growth? And then how do you learn from that if something happens? Because that's just going to fuel you to the next part. I just really loved that look at it, because it felt like, why wouldn't every kid want to try this and figure this out? So I really love that piece. And I imagine that was important to you, seeing your own children and all the kids around you. It's more than a business, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Thank you for that, because that's the core of what this is all about. My goal is not for these kids to grow up to be entrepreneurs. I mean, if they want to, then great. That's wonderful. But my goal is to get kids to learn how to think like entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
Because if they can learn how to think like entrepreneurs, they will grow up to be more comfortable taking risks. They won't be afraid to fail. They'll be more self confident. They'll have greater self esteem. They'll be more likely to reach their potential, regardless of the path they choose. I say that they'll be better doctors and lawyers and teachers and parents and whatever it is they want to do. And so when I talk to kids at schools and libraries across the country, that's a big part of it. I talk to them about that entrepreneurs are comfortable taking risks because they know that even if that business fails, they're going to learn something that will help them succeed the next time. And so I say to kids all the time that entrepreneurs don't say win some, lose some. They say win some, learn some. And
Yeah.
I take kids through examples of famous people that failed, because kids have these celebrities and entertainers and athletes. They have them up on this pedestal and they think, wow, that they're incredibly successful, but they don't know that their challenges that they had as a kid and the failures that they went through. And so I share that with kids as a big part of what I do with in my presentations, is just getting kids to think about what it means to be an entrepreneur and how to develop that entrepreneurial mindset. And that's what this whole thing is all about.
Yeah. And I think that's where kids have us adults beat, is that they are so much more willing than we are to think outside the box, to take that risk, to not worry about what could go wrong. And then we swoop in with the logistics and the questions and the parameters. And it was just so refreshing to be able to let that stuff go and just remember what the spirit of thinking this way could do.
Yeah. It's funny because when I did the children's book festival at my launch, before we opened the doors, I brought all the kids and all the families, all the kids and all the parents together, and sort of gave a pep talk to the kids. Then I turned to the parents and I said, "Oh, thank you so much for everything you did to get here. I know that was a lot of work, and thank you for supporting your kids in entrepreneurship. I want to be clear, this is a children's business festival. Your work is done. Your kids are gonna make mistakes. They're gonna do things a different way than you wouldn't do. That's why we're here. We're here for them to learn. If they ask for help, go right ahead and provide it, but please, this is a children's business festival." And that's the whole thing, is to get the kids to take those risks and let them fail and learn from it the next time, because when they grow up, they will have developed that risk muscle
Yeah.
and that lack of fear of failure, and those things will open doors for them in the future, and that's what's so important that you get from even just a simple lemonade stand.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so true. Along with the mindset, I felt like another important part of the book was something that I was missing growing up for sure. It wasn't in any books I ever got my hands on, and I don't think it was any classes I ever took as well, which is just this idea of financial literacy, right? What does it mean to manage your money, to have a budget, to have a business where, there are costs and there are profits, and it's actually what's left is what's important. And there were so many things that I've learned the hard way about how to do that, as
Uh-huh.
I imagine many listeners. And so to have it so clearly laid out here with examples of what that looks like and how you get those calculations. Well, how much do I need to sell to break even? I thought, well, there's like the magic bullet right there of just a life skill, not just a business skill, but a life skill. So I really like those pieces you put in there too, and think they'll be quite powerful for many.
Thank you, and I think we also try to incorporate that, and the kids are working on their math skills and that financial literacy skills, but also then at the end of the day, what do you do with the money you make?
Yeah.
And, we talk about spend some, share some, save some, as a way to think about what you're gonna do with the money. You're gonna spend some and reinvest it back in your business, or maybe you just wanna buy something for yourself. Maybe you started the business because you wanna buy a toy or a game that your parents won't pay for you.
Right.
And then save some, putting some away, and share some, whether people or in your community, or there are causes in your community that you can donate to and give to those that are less fortunate. I think that's an important part of that financial literacy discussion as well. And so, yeah, that's the whole thing. Is there's just life skills. These are life skills that are coming from lemonade stands, and that's why I just feel so strongly we want to get more kids to do it and try to help them be more successful at it.
Yeah. I really love hearing you talk about it because I knew it as I was reading this book that it wasn't just a book about how to start a business. You can clearly feel on the pages. This is just how to develop that mindset and to live with really important life skills. Um, and hearing you talk about it now, it's even more important. I think that kids get a book like this information early and just get that creativity, they get that excitement, but then they get that information too. I really think like if I had something like this a long time ago, I could have saved myself a little bit of trouble in some
The
cases.
the number one thing I hear from adults, both with the Startup Squad book series as well as this one, is exactly that. I wish I had this when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And so I'm just glad to be able to bring it to market. And I think I don't know that a big five publisher has ever created a how to start a business book for kids. And
Yeah.
it is about time.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got to say one of my favorite things, and your book has lots of sticky notes all through it of
Yeah,
my own learning. But I think one of my favorite things that just made me smile and imagine, it was in chapter 3 where you're picking a problem. And the problem was, and this is a problem in my house, Brian, it's a big problem in my house where someone keeps eating your container of ice cream that you put in the freezer. And I love the solution. Put an ice cream container lock on it with only a combination you know. I love that. I thought this is a book. Kids are so naturally creative to come up with this. And I just can't imagine some of the ideas that you have heard over the years at those fairs, at your launches, but I need this lock
yeah,
home.
that's a good one. I like that one.
So, in thinking about kind of putting this book into the hands of parents, of teachers, of educators, but certainly the kids who are hopefully on the receiving end of it, what is, if you could whittle it down, because I imagine you have a lot to say about this. What is your hope for that reader who picks it up, who reads it start to finish, closes the book? What do you hope happens next?
I hope they do exactly what we're trying to do, which is go out and start a business. Either if they can think of, we help guide kids towards what's the perfect business for them. Like, what are you passionate about, right? If you like animals, start a dog walking business or a pet sitting business. If you like to play sports, you can be a sort of tutor younger kids about how to play sports, or like a mother's helper type role. And so, or if you have a problem to solve, right? If there's a
Yeah.
food or a game or something that doesn't work the way you think it should, see the problem and turn it into an opportunity. So while we try to help kids choose that perfect business, I also say don't spend too much time thinking about what that right business is. Just go out and start a lemonade stand, bake some brownies, do whatever it is, because then you'll go out and you'll start learning and you start making those mistakes and learning from them. And then when you do have the idea for that perfect business, you'll be that much further ahead, right? If you're selling lemonade and you think of starting a dog walking business, sell lemonade. And if someone walks by you with a dog, say, "Hey, what do you do with your dog during the day? Who takes care of your dog during the day? Or when you're away, what do you do?" And then all of a sudden, you have a conversation about what other needs there are in the market. So I would love for kids to close the book and either, if they have the idea for the business, that's perfect for them, go off and do it. Or if not, just go off and start something simple while they think through what that right business is.
Yeah. Believe in yourself and just take a step forward.
Absolutely. Take
Yeah.
that risk.
And that is the cardinal rule as I'm finding in the adult business world, right? Because so often adults with ideas wait until the idea is fleshed out and all of the ducks are lined up in a row and the website's there and in reality nothing happens at all when you wait. So I love that advice. Just start. Just start because you can't make something better unless you actually just begin something.
Yeah, here in Silicon Valley, there's a term called the minimum viable product or an MVP. Just create something that's enough to be able to take out to show to someone and test it and see what it is. And when I first started this process, that was one of the things I did. My early drafts I viewed as minimum viable products, and I gave them to kids to read, and I gave them to parents to read, and I got that feedback, and then continued to work at it and improve it.
Ugh. Well, I can't wait to push this book into all the kids I know. I have 20-year-old and two 17-year-olds, and I'm making them read it next because I would love for them to have that confidence and that background and that knowledge as they are starting this new, more independent phase. So thank you. Thank you for it. There's so much filled inside.
My pleasure. As I said, I'm excited to have it out in the world. This is a passion project of mine, and I always knew I wanted to do nonfiction, but I wanted to start with fiction, and that was important to me because I wanted the kids that would never think of starting a business to read a fun story about four girls who start a business and say, "Hey, that sounds like fun. I want to do that too." And
Yeah.
now that we've got a little bit of that, now, okay, let's reach the kids who maybe already have an idea for a business or want to start a business but don't know how to go about it. And let's give them the nonfiction tools to be able to do it more successfully.
Well, as an educator, my favorite thing was when I could give a child one book and that sparked the next one. And the
Yeah.
startup squad is certainly going to spark You're the Boss or You're the Boss is going to spark the
Yeah,
Startup Squad and to have those go back and forth. So it really is a perfect pairing.
yeah.
So where
Thank
can oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, no, please.
Okay. I was just wondering where listeners can find you online. If they want to learn more about your books, about you, your work, the things that you're doing with young entrepreneurs, where is the best place?
So we have got two brands and two sites. You'retheboss.com is the site for this new book, and that's where we host the business plan template that goes along with the book. On social media, we are at You're the Boss Book on most major platforms. And then the Startup Squad is our other more girl targeted website, and that is at the Startup Squad. Same thing on all the social media channels. And I will also offer to your listeners, if anyone purchases a book, and I'd be happy to send them a signed book plate and stickers and bookmarks for their kids. So just send an email to info@thestartupsquad.com and just put KidLit Love in the subject line, and send me your address, and I'm happy to send it off, and we could turn your kid's copy of the book into a signed copy.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. That is, music to book lovers' ears when that happens. So that is exciting. That is another first that an author has offered that. So thank you for that. That's
We're
wonderful.
we're breaking down all the barriers.
We are. We are. Thank you so much, Brian, for coming onto the podcast. I loved the book. I loved our conversation, and I'm even more inspired than I was when I first started. And I just truly enjoyed our time. Thank you.
I appreciate you having me, and I look forward to hearing all about your next business.
Thank you. And listeners, thank you for listening to another episode of KidLit Love, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the KidLit Love podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes at alitlife.com. And if you want more, you might like to listen to my other podcast called Get Literate. It's a podcast that explores all things books and reading, notebooks and writing, and everything in between to build a life you love. One more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a bookish friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish community of KidLit Love. Thanks for listening.